Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over how to win more solo matches in Season 5 of Fortnite Battle Royale. The meta has changed so many times already in Season 5 that I really wanted to hold off on making this video until it had finally settled into a solid place, and with the recent slight buff to the health of materials and slight nerf to SMGs overall, I think we've finally reached a place where I have a firm understanding of how to be as successful as possible in Season 5. We're going to be breaking this video down into 3 different sections geared towards being successful in solos: beginning game, middle game, and end game. To consistently win solos in Fortnite, you need to be good at all 3 of those parts of a solo match. I'll be putting a major emphasis on the beginning and end game because in my experience that's what the most people struggle with in a solo match. And with the way the storm closes now at the end of the game, which was an addition to Season 5, end game is much different than it was in the first 4 seasons. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so we're going to start off with how to be successful at the beginning of a solo match. The beginning of a solo game is just as important, if not more important, than the end of a solo game, so even though there's a lot of luck involved with the very beginning, there are definitely some important tricks/strategies that you should definitely know. Alright, so the first thing that you're going to have to get through your head if you want to be successful at the beginning of a solo game is to always prioritize landing on any decent weapons as opposed to landing on chests or shields. The absolute easiest way to get killed in Fortnite is to not have a weapon when someone else does at the beginning of a game. That's why it's always smart to take the sure thing over gambling on a chest or say a shield spawn. Because yeah, there are going to be games, you land on minis, get 50 shield and then find a nice weapon around the corner, but for every one of those games, there's going to be a game where you land on minis, drink them, and a guy rounds the corner with attack shotgun. I'll take the guy with 100 health and attack shotgun over the guy with 150 health and a pickaxe. It's the same thing with landing on chests. You're basically gambling your life on one random roll of a chest. Are there going to be times you get maybe a gold heavy and maybe some mini shields? Yeah, and you'll feel like a genius when it happens. But for all of those times, there's going to be probably 4 or 5 where you get a hunting rifle or a grenade launcher or a bolt action sniper rifle, and good luck doing anything with any of those weapons in any kind of a close range fight. So it's always smart to take the sure thing in the form of a weapon. The weapons I will land on. I'll land on any shotgun, I'll land on any SMG, I'll land on any single AR except for the white burst AR, and there are also some niche weapons. I'll probably land on an RPG, and I'll probably land on the dual pistols, but a lot of the time it just depends on what I see down there. So always take the sure weapon spawn over anything else when you're landing. Next up, once you loot your initial building or house or wherever you land, you need to learn to let your loot determine how you're going to play the rest of your starting town. For example, if you loot, a chest and 2 or 3 weapon spawns, and you end up walking away with a gray pistol, a hunting rifle, some grenades, a bolt-action sniper rifle, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but first off, you have awful luck, and second off, you're going to need to play really defensive. You're basically going to need to camp and set up only fights where you're going to have such a huge advantage that you'll be able to outgun someone with, say, your white pistol compared to the shotgun or AR or SMG that they're going to have. If you run out in the open and try to play aggressive with the kit that you have, well, you're going to get killed before you even know what happened to you. On the other hand, the other polar opposite end of the spectrum, let's say you get a blue tack shotgun, a drum gun, you get some minis followed up by a big shield and maybe a slurp for even extra healing, so you're at 100 with a great shotgun and a drum gun. You need to play super aggressive, because the longer you wait, the stronger your enemies get. If you can loot really well really quickly and have a strong kit in the first 30 to 60 seconds of a game, you don't want to sit and camp for 2-3 minutes and let guys hit an extra 2 or 3 chests, maybe go from 50 shield to 100 shield, go from maybe 20 materials to 200 materials. You want to be as aggressive as possible if you have a really strong kit off of your starting building, because having a really stacked inventory, especially at the beginning of the game, will make up for a lot of the disadvantages that you may run into when you're going after other players. Let's just have a quick little poll. Who would you guys rather have on your side? Who would you pick to win a fight? A 2 KD player with, say, a blue pump, a blue drum gun, 100 health, and 100 shield, or a 6 KD player with just a white tack, 100 health, and 0 shield? You know, I know some people may pick the 6 KD player, but I'm guessing the majority are going to take the 2 KD player with way more shield and way better weapons. I think they would win that fight probably 8 or 9 out of 10 times, and that's the power that a super stacked inventory can have at the beginning of a game. So now let's move on to more of the middle game of a solo match. Once you've cleared out your opening town, or at least began to clear it out, you should start to work on forming your ideal 5-slot loadout. My personal opinion at this point in Season 5, this is what I rock with in solo, duo, and squad matches. I like to use an AR guaranteed, a pump shotgun, a drum gun, and then 2 healing spots. I would be fine, especially in a solo, if you would change out one of the healing spots with either a sniper, RPG, or a grenade launcher, and you could also make small modifications if you can't get a drum gun, like an SMG or a compact SMG work fine. But in my opinion, at this point in the game, with after all of the changes that have been made to the close range meta over the last few weeks, this is the loadout that I would rock with, and this is the loadout that I would most recommend. Some other tips for the general middle part of solo games. First off, it actually isn't the end of the world to overbuild in solo matches. One of the tips I always give when discussing how to become a better builder, how to win build battles, is don't overbuild. Be really cost effective with the materials that you use in a build fight. And the reason why that is incredibly important, especially in, say, a squads match, is let's say you use 600 materials to kill a single person when you have 800 total materials at the beginning of the fight. Well, awesome, now you've knocked down one guy, but if you're in a squads match, you only have 200 materials left to kill 3 other people. And if they're competent at all, that's not really possible, and you're going to end up dying. However, in a solo match, if you have 800 materials to start with and you use 600 to kill a person, well, that's basically wiping the entire threat towards you. There are going to be times you get third and maybe even fourth partied, but especially towards the middle of games when there's like 30 people left and half of the map is still viable because the storm isn't hitting it, there's a really low chance that you're going to get third partied in long build fights. So that's why it's not the end of the world to overbuild. Even though you'll be at 200 mats at the end of the fight, you'll pick up mats from your enemies, and you'll have some time of peace and quiet to rebuild your material stack by hitting, you know, trees or rocks or whatever. And the final middle game tip I'll give you guys is try to avoid using any means of fast transportation that leave you vulnerable. I'm mainly talking about shopping carts and ATKs, and I suspect when zip lines are added to the game, it'll pretty much be the same thing as those other 2 things I mentioned. But basically, ATKs specifically are really loud and give your position away, and you're also really vulnerable because unlike in a squads game, you're not going to have any passengers that can shoot at enemies and protect you as you're driving. You're basically just asking to be shot at 2 or 3 times before you get out of the ATK. Obviously, there are going to be situations you need to use it when you're trying to escape the storm, but if you don't need to, I would for the most part recommend not using them and instead sticking with like launch pads or bouncers, or more specifically a feature of Season 5, rifts, because those are awesome in solo matches. So now let's move on to the all-important endgame. I would say the endgame is the part of the match that most people struggle with in solo games. The first thing that we're going to be discussing when it comes to endgame is how to deal with the new endgame circles in Season 5. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the small circles at the end of the match which start inside of the storm and creates the eventual new safe zone as the storm begins to close towards it. It is so important, and probably the biggest endgame tip I can give you guys is always try to be the first person to rotate to these new endgame circles that start inside of the storm. And the best way to do this is to save bouncers or a launch pad or impulses for the end of the game, so as soon as you see where that new circle is going to be, you immediately use those means of fast transportation to propel yourself towards it. If you are the first person to rotate to this new out of storm circle, it will give you such a huge advantage. And I'm going to highlight why that is in the form of pictures right now. The first picture here is an example of an old endgame circle. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, this one's a little bit outdated and the circle's a bit too large to be endgame, but just pretend it's a little smaller because it gets my point across. Let's say you were to set up smack dab in the middle of that circle as illustrated by the X and all of the lines. As you can see, you could get pushed by enemies coming from literally any direction. North, south, east, west, even northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, anywhere, okay? And it also makes it very difficult for you to know where people are coming from, and it makes it really safe for people to rotate from the old circle to the new one. However, let's compare that to one of the new Season 5 endgame circles. As you can see, that safe zone is going to eventually close into the new safe zone with the storm pushing out everyone in the old one. If you were to set up smack dab in the middle of this new circle when it eventually opens up as the storm pushes in, you're basically going to know where every single enemy is coming from, since they're all going to have to be coming from, the old safe zone. So you can basically sit in the middle of that circle and, like the lines indicate, just set up looking in only that direction, knowing exactly where everyone's going to be coming from. That's why if you camp and basically ride the storm into one of these final new circles, you're basically going to be playing a 2v1 in solo. You're going to have to be fighting against the guy shooting at you because he knows exactly where you're coming from, and he's probably had time to set up in high ground, and you're also going to be fighting against the storm, which is probably doing 7 damage per second at this point. So if you get caught behind your build or just can't move forward for whatever reason, well, the storm will probably kill you even quicker than the enemy could. So make sure you rotate early to these circles. You'll see it all the time in Summer Skirmish. It is so important. The final tip I'm going to give you guys for the end of a solo game is to try to third party as many fights as possible. And there's no better way for me to illustrate this than by giving you guys one of the best endgame tips I've ever heard for Fortnite. Let's say you're in a solo game with 3 people left. You want to do whatever in your power to avoid fighting any of the other 2 people. You basically want to hide and wait it out for those other 2 enemies to engage each other, and then you come in third party, clean them both up, and win the game. That way, instead of killing 2 individual one-on-one opponents, you're basically going to be fighting 2 weakened opponents at the end of the game that are also fighting each other. Anytime you get into the top 5, I don't want to say like be totally scared and just straight up avoid fights, but anytime you hear 2 people fighting each other or just in general have an opportunity to third party, run over there as quick as possible and take advantage of it, because it will make winning solo games, especially at the end of games, so much easier. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you stayed the entire way, be sure to leave me a comment down in the comment section below. How many solo wins do you have in your lifetime as a Fortnite player? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.